What's up, y'all? It's GC Kinsey, here to talk about what Pride means to me and give you a first-hand look at some Pride events that have had a major impact on my life. The first time I ever celebrated Pride was as an ally, or at least that's what I thought I was at the time. It was the summer of 2009. I was living in Washington, D.C. and doing an internship and taking some courses at Georgetown University, and one weekend in June, some other students asked if I wanted to go to a Pride parade with them. At this point in my life, I was majorly into queer culture, even though I was still several years away from figuring out that I was queer myself. A lot of my closest friends were queer. I loved going to drag shows or watching queer movies or discussing queer media with them. And I was educating myself about queer issues and queer rights in ways that I hadn't even been able to access in the small conservative-leaning town I grew up in. There were tons of little clues along the way that should have cracked my egg or let me know I wasn't straight, but I just didn't pick up on them, and maybe I wasn't ready to. Instead, I could only conceive of myself as that classic, very strong ally who is passionate about all things queer, but on my friend's behalf, not my own. But it didn't matter, because either way it meant that when my classmates at Georgetown asked if I wanted to go to that Pride parade with them, my answer was, heck yes. This was Capitol Pride, an annual festival that's been held in DC since 1975, and what a Pride festival to go to for my very first one. I've been to many Pride events since then, but none of them have had the same size or scale or as many things to do as this one. I think what made the biggest impression on me was seeing such a huge number of queer people gathered in one place. And not only that, but seeing them celebrate their queerness, because that would have been unheard of in my hometown. The very tiny handful of people there who dared to be out as gay or bi were heavily ostracized for it. And no one there was out as any other flavor of queer, so I didn't learn that, for example, trans people exist until I'd moved away. Even in my much more progressive college town, I'd seen people get bullied for being openly queer, including a gay man I did musical theater with having a milkshake thrown at him by a bunch of frat bros shouting homophobic slurs. And you have to remember that the summer of 2009 was a time when same-sex marriage, the big hot-button issue around queer rights, was only legal in 6 US states. So seeing that much queer community, queer celebration, and queer joy on such a large scale was an eye-opening experience. And even though it didn't end up serving as my queer awakening, I would still think of myself as an ally for several years afterward. Capitol Pride was still a major milestone on the journey of figuring out who I was. The energy from that event, the feeling that queer people were in this together and had each other's backs, carried over into other queer spaces I went into and made them feel like they were safe. They were welcoming. They were somewhere I belonged. Even when I still had yet to realize I was queer, every time I went to a queer club or a Pride event or especially a drag show, it always felt like I was home. And after I finally did realize I was queer and came out to all my friends, I made a point of going to every local Pride event I could. Street festivals, parades, drag shows, concerts, Pride-themed nights at the skating rink, you name it, I was there. I suppose it was like making up for lost time. For all the Pride events I'd gone to when I was not just in the closet, but stuffed in a box at the very back of it, so deeply hidden away that I had no idea I was even in there. Because Pride definitely does have a different vibe once you know you're queer. Once you get to be one of the ones waving a flag that represents the person you are instead of just the people you love and support. Once you understand the real reason why you've kept coming back to this community over and over like a moth to a flame. I remember the first Pride festival I went to after coming out as a transmasculine NB. My friends and I wore Pride-themed pirate regalia and went as the Pirates of the Queeribbean. I was in drag as an original character I like to call Captain Glitterbeard, and I was so inspired by all the fellow trans and non-binary people I saw at that festival, being out and proud with their flags and their colors and their pronoun accessories, and feeling so grateful for how many of them complimented me on my look or saw my flag and said, hey, me too. On the day I'm recording this, it's June 24th, 2023, exactly 1 year since I took my very first dose of testosterone and began my medical transition. And my city happens to have its Pride Festival today, so that's how I'm celebrating. Really, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Of course, I had to bring it full circle with another pirate-themed look. And I'm really excited to mark this milestone of 1 year on T by celebrating queer and trans joy with my chosen family and fellow members of the community. I see a lot of conflicting opinions about Pride every time the month of June rolls around. Some people celebrate it like I do, while others have totally legitimate reasons not to. Maybe they're not ready to acknowledge their own queerness and celebrating Pride would make it too real for them. Maybe they're not out and can't celebrate safely. Maybe they find it hard to be proud of who they are when the world constantly shames them for it. Maybe they're burnt out on seeing corporations capitalize off Pride when it suits them, but refuse to put their money where their mouth is and support us when it counts. Maybe they've been made to feel unwelcome in the queer community, like they're not queer enough, and that gatekeeping has pushed them away. Which is extremely not cool, by the way. We should never be doing that to each other. Anyway, whatever their reasons are, the people who don't feel like celebrating Pride are totally valid. But one thing I just can't understand is when I hear people take that a step further and say, we don't need Pride anymore. Not every person may need Pride for themselves, but as a community, we need it now just as much as we needed it when it began. There's no better time than right now, when so many US states are regressing on queer rights and protections, especially for the trans community, to remember that the first Pride was a riot. That people like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Stormy DeLavery, and many others at the Stonewall Inn on June 28, 1969 had enough of being criminalized just for being who they were. We should never be criminalized for our very existence ever again, especially not 54 years after the Stonewall riots, yet here we are. And that's why we absolutely still need Pride. Until we achieve the queer liberation that our elders fought for, we will always need Pride. And even then, I don't think the need for Pride will ever fully go away. Because there will always be queer people who need community, and Pride is one of the most effective entry points into that community. Just like it was for me all those years ago, even long before I'd realized I was queer. It's a way for us to shine a beacon of light so that those who are different, those who are questioning, those who are closeted and feel alone, know that they're not. That there are other people out there in the world just like them, ready to welcome them home with open arms. Now that I've shared what Pride means to me, what does Pride mean to you? Do you celebrate it? And if so, how? Has your relationship with Pride shifted at all during the course of your life? Do you have any memories of Pride you'd like to share? Drop a comment below and let's get a discussion going. You can also reach out to me on other social media. I am GC Kinsey across all platforms. And while you're here, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I released some very special stuff for Pride Month 2023, including vlogs about ace superpowers and trans joy, as well as a brand new cosplay music video featuring Thor and Loki in drag. I've got more cosplay music videos, vlogs about my experiences as a queer person, makeup tutorials, pre- and post-testosterone voice recordings, and more right here on this channel. And I'll be releasing a super cool project in July about how I tracked the changes in my voice during my first year on testosterone. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything new. And with that, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate all of your support. I hope your Pride Month has been amazing, and I will see you on the next one.